According to the 2022 Data Breach Investigations Report, 82% of breaches involve the human element. Yet most security awareness and training programs focus on compliance requirements, not the risk humans pose to your organization. Living Security is the leader in human risk management. This new approach transforms human risk into proactive defense by quantifying human risk. By understanding your riskiest and most vigilant users and activities, you can engage these segments of your workforce with relevant training, communications, and policies to truly change their behaviors. If your goal is to finally change your workforce's behavior, visit securityweekly.com/living security to learn more today. Mimecast has released its State of Ransomware Readiness Report for 2022, finding that most cybersecurity leaders experienced the same or increasing numbers of ransomware attacks over last year. Together with Mimecast, organizations can stand strong in the face of cyber attacks, human error, technical failure, and work protected. Mimecast. Work protected. Visit securityweekly.com/Mimecast to learn more. Welcome back to Business Security Weekly. I am your host, Matt Alderman, joined by Jason Albuquerque, Tyler Robinson, and Adrian Sanabria. Security Weekly listeners save $100 on their RSA Conference 2023 full conference pass. RSA Conference will take place April 24th to 27th in San Francisco and on demand. To register using our discount code, please visit securityweekly.com/RSAC 2023 and use the discount code 53UCyber. We hope to see you there. All right, gentlemen, articles for the week. There's a couple interesting ones that we just touched on at the end of the last segment around CISOs and retired CISOs and skill sets. A couple really interesting articles in here we'll hit on. The first article I pulled in was really this dynamic risk landscape, right? Went out. This is a study that was done across various leaders on what are some of the big global risk areas for 2023. And I like to bring this to everybody's attention because there's always some really interesting things in here that impact not only global leaders, but also the security leadership. And I focused kind of on the 6 takeaways. And I think number one, we've talked about a lot, to me is economy, right? The economy being top of mind. We've seen such a drastic set of layoffs and changes in workforce in the last 6 months. And I don't think we're done. That's going to impact. By
changes, you mean layoffs, right?
Yes. Yes, that's what I mean.
Yeah. What I liked about this article, Matt, was that it didn't just go over the next 12 months, but it actually did some projections out to 2032, right? Yeah. I mean, it was 1,300 executives that they interviewed, and they asked them not only to look at the next 12 months, but a time horizon, right? So that was pretty cool to get that insight. But the pressures on businesses today are immense, the most we've probably ever seen. And one of the things that I took out of this article is they said that the levels of risk that they saw this year were higher than the last 11 years of surveys that they've done. Yes. So these executives are saying our risk levels are higher than the last 11 years. So think about it. They're still fighting with, the future of the way people work. They're still fighting with that, right? Some organizations are trying to suck everybody back in. You have the workforce fighting back, and that's a whole debacle there. There's questions on the economy. I mean, that's insanity right there. Tons of layoffs, pressures on the business. And then just think about the cybersecurity landscape we're in right now. Regulatory, compliance, legal, people can't get insurance. I mean, the levels of pressure on businesses right now are immense.
And then you add the icing to the cake with the geopolitical stance. And then, from a cybersecurity standpoint, ransomware, threat actors, nation states posing as ransomware, all of the things that are now coming against businesses, the ability for you to make an informed decision, prioritize that risk from a business standpoint, not just your capital risk, but your overall risk from going under just from something like a ransomware attack or a brand disruption. Those things, I've never seen a point in time where it's more dangerous and you don't have the luxury and budget to actually go out and fix that because of all the other economy problems.
Yeah. Resilience and agility are going to be mantras for the successful businesses going forward. You're going to have to be resilient and you're going to have to be agile in the way you're working. You have to be. And that's all we talk about. It's lead measures. You need to be focused on lead measures.
Yeah. And it's not just this year and next year. It's the next 10 years. To your point, Jason, right? They look out 10 years. This disruptive state is going to be with us for the next decade. Mm-hmm. Now, if you go way, way back, so roughly 50, almost 60 years ago was the last time we saw anything like this, right? Coming out of the 70s, high inflation, some of the challenges with the oil embargo, et cetera. There's a lot of people that don't remember those days that are still in the workforce, right? We haven't seen anything like this since then. And so we've seen little blips along the way in 99 and 08 and these periods. But to project out the next 10 years of this kind of disruption, we haven't really gone through a period like that. We just came out of a 14-year period of, oh my gosh, incredible growth to go through now potentially a decade of a higher risk and a lot of challenges. I don't think most businesses are ready for this.
No, agreed.
Are there good historical lessons and strategies from the leadership standpoint of the last generation that went through that? Like, who are we turning to for kind of advice, and how are we distinguishing those good leaders to make those good leadership calls?
Yeah, there's not a lot of them around.
Yeah,
is my fear.
My concern is that there are a lot of distractions. Especially in a report like this, it's talking about AI and metaverse and quantum computing. And we look at the bulk of the losses happening today, and it's still somebody logging in with admin and, stealing a bunch of data and sending you a ransom note, and not just the trends coming up, but also the vendors. We talk about how huge that vendor landscape is, and there's just a lot of distractions to take you away, folks who still haven't mastered those fundamentals. Where every time I look at a ransom attack, some kind of extortion attack, it just looks like every pen test I've ever seen. Yeah. Using the same techniques, the same tools, and we haven't mastered that yet. So I feel like once we've mastered
that's one of the bullets here, though, Adrian. One of the bullets is companies have to hunker down.
Yeah.
Right. Over the near term, so they can keep their eye on preparing for the future. Well, good foundation is preparing for the future.
Absolutely.
Good financial foundation, good security foundation, good technology foundation, good culture. Mm-hmm. This is how you're going to keep your people around during the hard times.
Yeah. Yep.
Right?
I feel like
4 pieces we need to be focused back on.
One extra bullet we need is don't get distracted.
And the other piece to that puzzle is we've not gotten those fundamentals right. And we've also extended our reliance and supply chain for interoperability between so many companies. We, as a company, it can't just be us relying on ourselves and hunkering down internally. We have to vet our supply chain. We have to vet our vendors. We have SaaS applications and integrations. And all of those things are pretty much out of our control for the most part. We can do some due diligence, but we are relying on the fact that everyone's doing this and doing a better job, which they're not. So that comes into that risk and mitigation category. You have to really get that resilience right.
And we wonder why CISOs change jobs every 2 years.
Nice lead-in, Matt. Yeah. Nice lead-in.
The stats in this article are you read through them and you're like, oh my gosh, we got a major problem on our hands.
I read this and I said, no shit. It's the 5 C's I've been talking about forever. Culture, connection, coffers, compensation, compliance. That's that list right there. This is the stuff I've been talking about that have been making CISOs, number one, stressed out and, jump jobs every 18 months. You're not in the right culture. I'm gone. You don't have the right connections with the C-suite, the CEO, the board of directors. I'm out. I don't have the coffers, meaning the budget. I don't have enough budget to do my job. Peace. I'm out of here. Compensation? Yeah, you're not paying me enough. Of course, I'm going to go start looking around. And then compliance is the last one because I don't want to work for an organization that's a check in the box organization. No, thank you.
Yeah.
Right? Those are the 5 C's I've been preaching about for years now. Why CISOs don't want to stay.
Yeah. And that leads into this Gartner article. And this article, there's 2 points in here. The first one I found really interesting, which is the first part of the stat is 50% of cybersecurity will change job. That doesn't surprise me. 25 basically outside of security. Like they're going to go find different roles in completely different areas of the business because they don't want to deal with the stress.
That's right. That is the scary stat right there.
Yes.
Is that we're losing more of the workforce who don't want to be part of cybersecurity anymore. That's a problem.
I mean, we all have that fantasy, right? Like we all dream about going and working construction some days, or Walmart. Honestly,
paper or plastic.
All day, some days, man.
Right.
And it says security leaders too. It's not saying like, somebody's first job in security runs them off, which we know happens. That's like, I think the stats I've seen on that are like a third. Like a third have one security job and they're like, nah, not for me. But yeah, they're saying leaders. So these are people who have, already, have some experience. Like that's even worse.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, because that's a much bigger number than just the CISO population, and 25% of that number is really big. It gets bigger, right?
And that's experience.
The second thing,
knowledge that goes away, which is very detrimental to our community, right?
Oh, agreed. Absolutely. Now, the second thing that was in there that kind of got buried in there was humans are the chief cause of security incidents, which we know. Back to the original point, like we can talk AI and ML and quantum computing and all this crazy stuff. To your point, Adrian, don't get distracted. We still haven't solved the core problem, which is the human element of this, right? And Gartner continues to talk about that component. Now they're using it to pitch their whole new insider risk market campaign, but it's true. It is the human element that we have not solved for in cybersecurity. So why are we chasing some of these bigger other areas when we haven't even kind of like secured the base?
Yeah, I've seen some CISOs on LinkedIn talking about how they set aside every Friday to take briefings from new vendors. Like that's insane. Like don't you have like maybe once a quarter could be justified, but every Friday, every week, like that's I mean. Yeah.
To go back to the fundamental question, are humans really the base problem for security? I mean, products are created for humans. We're all humans. Like the consumers are humans. So really, is this a problem with people building bad technology? It's not necessarily the humans themselves. Yeah, we'll click on links, but that's by design. That's the technology we're trying to communicate. We're trying to purchase. We're trying to do things with technology. So humans, are we just designing these incorrectly? We're designing these incorrectly for humans to leverage them properly, or are we just not building enough controls and a boundary around it? Like this doesn't seem like it's always a human problem.
I think it's all of the above, Tom. I think some security teams are building solutions that cause so much friction that your employees are going to work around it. You're going to get shadow IT. You're going to have them bypass controls. You're going to have them try to work around it because there's too much friction, right, for them to do their day-to-day jobs. That means the security team's not connected enough to that business unit to know the process, know what could help augment their process and make it better. We're seeing this friction. I think the stat in there was like 69% of employees bypass security controls. What does that tell you?
The technology
we're not building proper solutions integrated into the business.
Yep.
We don't understand the business well enough.
And and you're listening to the new security AI startups instead of talking to your internal customers about what they need, about how you can make their life easier, right?
Exactly what I was thinking. Spend every Friday collaborating with your business unit leaders to find out how you can help their organization be better.
Yeah.
Instead of working with vendors.
We're always chasing that easy button, right? We're always chasing that one thing that's going to fix it all and get around and make this so we don't have to think about security. Like that destination mindset rather than this continual journey of improvement, just like people in general. Like you always have that self-improvement, always continual learning. You always have to be moving. There's no destination to get to. And that's the same for security. We really have to get out of that mindset of like this one button's going to fix everything and make security better and we can just move on and do business. Like not going to happen. So just integrate the security and doing business well, and then the rest of it works itself out.
Yeah. It's
a journey. If you're a CISO who dedicates every Friday to meeting with vendors, cancel all those meetings and meet with other department heads and other stakeholders in the business to see how you can serve them better. Make that the topic.
Have ChatGPT go look at all those vendors for you, bring you back an answer.
Yeah.
And then you can do
right.
Exactly. So that's actually a business model. I saw a business the other day, and all they do is they go out, like you tell them what you need, what your roadmap is, what your security program is. And I forget the name of it. It's pretty small startup, but what they do is they, I want to say it was Chris Roberts who was engaging with them. He's the CISO over at Boom. And they go out and they do all that work for you. Like they go through the briefings with the vendors and stuff like that, and they bring you back only the ones that are worth your time. So that's actually a service now.
I thought that was what Gartner was supposed to do.
So yeah, so that's the question, right? But they're not doing it for you. Like it's more general. So what this company's doing, like they understand specifically what you need, so it's almost like a personal trainer, but for your security program, kind of a little bit.
Yeah, that's a whole new way to think about all the research analyst firms at some point, right? Because you could, by leveraging a service like this, get all the answers you need specific to you without some of these other analysts in the mix. It's an interesting
and maybe
concept,
they use
right?
some of that stuff. Like maybe you don't have time to go read all the Gartner reports, so this company's going to do that part for you as well.
Yeah, that would definitely free up some budget, because that means you don't have to have subscriptions into all of them. You pay for an Uber subscription that has access and just gives you what you need back.
Yeah, and it'll give you time to work on your business.
Yeah,
instead of
right
with manufacturers.
Yeah,
and figuring out how to solve your people problem. Right? Like, how do you change your security culture? How do you create more appreciation for your employees and what they do? And how do you limit the risk exposure they have to your organization? Like,
it's hard to do, Matt. It's hard to do.
I know. It's hard to do. Therefore, we go try to find a technology solution to solve it. Hasn't worked yet, folks. Sorry. It hasn't worked yet. Next article. Measuring cybersecurity, the what and why and how. The first part of this article I kind of skipped. I went down to kind of the section of how can security teams measure cybersecurity, and because they really focus on, we do this as a business, right? OKRs, objectives and key results, right? You talk about this a lot, Jason. Key indicators, both forward-looking metrics and rear-view-looking metrics, right? If you're not really sitting down to identify what are the key indicators you're really interested in, it's going to be really hard for you to set up an appropriate set of metrics to measure in the business.
And you can't do it in a silo. We talked about it earlier. You have to involve stakeholders in the business. Who's going to know what's most impactful for the services team? The leader of the services team. For the finance team, the CFO. For HR, right? Your chief HR officer. So you have to work with the business units to define these requirements in these key indicators, because it's a collaborative effort. It's not security dictating what these key indicators are. It's your business and the business leaders defining it together. That's how you're going to be successful.
And you have to understand the business itself, right? Like, you can't just be technology focused. You have to understand the business needs, and that does mean the collaboration, but that also means you have to expand your horizon and get a grasp on what is the business trying to do? How do we actually make our money? What are the challenges from each unit in order to get to a profitability standpoint? And that means you're not focused on technology, well outside of it.
Yeah, you're focused on understanding the strategies of all the other business units. That's how you learn their business. They're all a little piece of the business, and you have to learn every aspect of that. And the only way to do that is to engage.
I've got a question for you, Jason, because this came up, this conversation, or a similar conversation. It was actually a conversation, CISO was asking, hey, does anybody ever use a BIA? And I came back and I said, that's how I do what you're talking about. That usually when I come into an organization, that's one of the first exercises I do, because out of that, I'm going to get what businesses care about, how they prioritize stuff. And it's an opportunity for me to have that conversation. It was interesting because most of the folks in there, I haven't been on the enterprise side for a while, were saying that they only use it for BCP stuff, because you get your recovery time.
Business impact assessments are huge. I used to do them quarterly.
Oh, wow.
Right? I did quarterly BIAs with my leaders. Yeah. And much of it was, some of it was for BCDR purposes. but other was for let me understand the risk in your business, in your business unit. Now that I understand the risk in your business unit, let me help you remediate that risk, mitigate that risk.
I haven't seen a.
Let's go to the CEO together with the results of this and go get funding.
Yeah, because I haven't seen a better structured approach to learning the business like that than a BIA. So, like, my question was like, okay, if you're not using a BIA for this, how are you doing it? How are you structuring it?
Right.
You're not.
Yeah, and again, I mean, BIA is a great tool to use, but the other side of it is you have to have that relationship and that trust with the business unit leader, so you start to become ingrained into the team.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, I would have service unit leaders invite me to their team meetings every once in a while, so I could, you know what I mean? So it's just, you start building that organic relationship. BIA is the assessment side and more the formality piece of it, right? That you can use as leverage when you need it and as knowledge when you need it, but you still need the relationships. You need to be meeting with the VPs and be introduced to the VPs and introduced to the directors and have your team be introduced to the managers and you have to be building those relationships.
It'd be cool. And Jason, you could probably do this. Build a list of indicators that you're doing the right things. The kind of feedback, like you're invited to, other departments' team meetings. Like that sounds like a good indicator. I think it would be cool to see a blog post that just kind of lists out like what are some of the indicators that you're doing the right things.
And if this isn't happening, how do you get to that point?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Good point. Right. I mean, we used to use BIAs, and we actually accounted for the business impact. We called it the business impact factor in our risk algorithms when we built Control Path, because we knew that each business was going to have different overall weightings based on their business impact to the overall organization. Well, if you don't account for those in your risk modeling, like how are you identifying which risks to prioritize? Like it's just, to me, it's kind of risk management 101, but if you're not doing them, you have no understanding of what those impacts
let's also get back to the conversation of why we fought for a seat at the table for so long. How will you understand economies of scale across the entirety of the company if you don't have the visibility into every single business unit? You want to know what impactful is? When you walk in the door as a CISO to the CFO and the CEO and say, I'm going to save you $500,000 a year because guess what I just found? And I can solve this with economies of scale across every single business unit because you have silos all over the place. And that's the seat at the table. That's the difference that the CFO and the CEO want to see.
And I think, some of what, like, I worry that we're blowing it. Right, like we get to see at the table, and then like the attitude I see a lot of the time is most important person right here. Like this is what you've been missing all this time. Cybersecurity is your most important priority, and that could
you start talking in metrics of how many endpoints you've deployed, and you start talking in metrics of how many phishing
and you
scams
alienate
you've deterred.
everyone.
Come on, that's
security incidents.
That's not what they want to be talking about.
I don't want to talk about that. I do this.
Right. But the conversations are at a business level, right? You can have those other conversations down with the technical team, right?
Sure.
You can have them down there. But when you're speaking to the CFO, you're speaking to the CEO, you're sitting in front of the board of directors, you need to be showing how you're enhancing the business, how you're mitigating business risk and what that means from a financial perspective, right? From the ability to actually go get insurance. So many organizations cyber liability, they come in and say, sorry, no more. Well, guess what I just did? I was able to give you the juice to go get cyber liability insurance now when you didn't have it 6 months ago. Right? It's those conversations that matter.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. Next article is on leadership, how to empower teams. Again, team empowerment is going to be very important. I think it already is, because some of these teams have been decimated. When you think about the layoffs that have happened, what's going on, like how do you get that team to feel empowered after a big layoff, for example? And I think it's really important for us as leaders to think about how do we continue to help our team become empowered and feel important now that they're, half of their teammates or whatever the number is are gone. So I like to pull these articles in because I think this is very important for us as leaders to figure out how do we get our teams optimized? And if they're not empowered, they're never going to get optimized. They're just not.
Right. Yeah. And it's a problem in a couple of different fashions. If you didn't have a strong culture now going into this, you better do some really, really hard work to reverse that fast. Otherwise, you're going downhill quick, right? Because you're not going to survive this. It was easier to hide. We all, we were bountiful. We had big teams. Our organization was cash heavy. Those times are leaving us, right? And if you didn't have a good cash flow and good cash in the coffers before, you're going to be under more financial stress. So if you didn't have a good culture, it's going to be harder to hide that. So you better start, you better start trying to reverse that culture, get a culture change going and really focus on employees, because you're going to find that you may have gone through a right sizing, but you're going to go through a second right sizing of people choosing to leave if you don't.
Yes.
And I think being very clear, like one of the things that as leaders, I think the places you can see good leadership happening is very clearly identified expectations. Now that things are so in flux, like they want the security, they'd like to know what their expectation, do they have a job, do they not? But also, what is expected of me to take over the roles and fill the voids of the places that are gone? If you don't have that clear expectation, you're not setting those as a leader, then you're going to be very disappointed, and your people are going to be disappointed because both sides of that, there's uncertainty. They don't know if they're performing well. They don't know what's expected of them, and that leaves them in a place of vulnerability. And then you start to get the dissemination in the ranks, and that's where the culture starts to fall apart. So you have to have some of those things in place, but you also have to combat a lot of those with that ownership and that expectation as a leader, or your people are going to be, they're already very frustrated. So making sure that frustration doesn't get amplified.
Yeah, and just know, at the core of every human, we all want to feel safe.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And we just watched a right sizing happen of 100 plus people leave our department, or 100 plus people leave our organization. At the core, we want to feel safe. So to your point, making sure there are clear goals and expectations of what I need to achieve as a worker here who's going to help this organization move forward from this, but also the resources and support. Is there support for me to escalate when I have a problem or a question? Do I have the resources to spend a little bit more money when I know we're swamped, we're burdened, we're overworked, and I need a little bit of help to augment this because we don't want to burn out. We don't want our staff to burn out. So what resources are available there, right? And allow your team to be able to come to you as a sounding board, because there's going to be a lot of stress. There's going to be a lot of anxiety. There could be misinterpretation of communication from the company. So there's fear, right? And you need to be there as a leader to be able to right all of those wrongs and, make them feel safe within the organization. So you have to have that open door policy where folks can just come to you and say, hey, I'm concerned. I have a question. I'm feeling anxious. I don't know what's going on.
Coincidentally, that's if you go back to the original Latin etymology of the word security, means without worry.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. And that's where we need to start focusing on, right? Again, as leaders, we're here to serve, right? To serve our people, to serve the other business units, to serve the organization. That's why we're in leadership roles, to serve.
And do you remember, I think right at the beginning when we started to see layoffs, I remember Patreon just laid off their entire team and then outsourced it. Like not most of the security team, like all that institutional knowledge, all those relationships, just gone like that. Not to mention what it looks like from the outside, from a PR perspective, to Patreon's customers.
Yeah, which leads into our last article, is how to apologize sincerely to all your customers after you just laid off your entire company.
Yeah. You know what?
People are not good at this one.
Nope.
As humans, though, we have really, really good bullshit meters. And we can tell when people are not sincere with an apology. We really do. I mean, people trust their gut, and our gut will tell us if someone's being sincere or not. And an apology is one of those. It's a very touchy subject, because if you're not sincere and you don't have empathy around it, it's just going to be seen as a lack of trust, right? I mean, to lie in someone's face is one thing, but to lie while you're apologizing is a totally different level, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, that just takes the trust factor and throws it in the trash can at that point. So you have to be sincere. If you don't mean it, you're better off just shutting up and not saying anything, honestly.
So I was apparently the last person to hear about this, but I learned about something called the platinum rule the other day. Does everybody else already know about this?
The what?
Okay, maybe not. Maybe not. Okay, so the golden rule, right? Treat others as you would want to be treated. So the platinum rule is treat others as they want to be treated. The point being that
I did read something on
what
that.
you think is good enough, what's good enough for you, or what you're okay with, like that's problematic, because you have to be able to see it, especially with an apology. You have to be able to see it through other people's eyes.
That's a psychology issue, right? You have to go outside of your understanding, really evaluate what the person needs and how to get to the point of being able for them to receive that. And that means, not putting a but after they're not adding context that they don't care about. Or in some cases, some people need that context. So you really have to read your audience and ensure that the way that you're delivering it is for them and not for making you feel better that you did the apology, because it won't come across right.
And man, across different, races of people, classes of people, countries with different cultures, there's a big gap there. I think in a lot of cases, a lot of companies, the people making these decisions, making these statements, do not have the ability to see anything through most of their employees' eyes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you want to know what, though? It takes a little bit of vulnerability on the human factor side as well, right?
Yeah.
Because you have to be able to walk in the door and say things like, you want to know what? I may not know the culture, but this is what I'm seeing, and this is where I'm seeing a gap. Acknowledge that you don't know the culture. Acknowledge that you don't know the norms. Acknowledge that there's a gap on your side, right? That vulnerability means something. That builds trust.
Mm-hmm.
Because how can you be expected to know everything? You're not. But you're going to walk in the door with your perspective and be able to articulate, listen, I don't know it all, but here's how I'm feeling, and I am sorry. I apologize that there was a disconnect between us. I apologize that we're not on the same page.
And that's very different from a blanket apology and just assuming that because you've given an apology, it works. Like that's the mindset change of understanding that you aren't the sole source, and whatever you say should be accepted as is and will be accepted as it.
Exactly.
Not how it goes.
It's okay as a leader to be vulnerable. It's okay.
Yes. And Jason, you highlighted two of the points, right? Take responsibility and acknowledge, right? Acknowledgement. Those are important, as this article points out, but it is in general to establish and build trust with an organization or with anyone. So, I think these are good things to really think about, because I find apologies are hard, right?
Yeah.
Because you did something wrong, you made a mistake, but you got to make it right. Right. And so I thought it was a really good way for people to think about, what are the things you need when you think about apologizing? What are those things that are going to be important to make it sincere, but also to continue to establish that trust with whoever it is? It could be your spouse. I mean, could be your, one of your colleagues.
I was just going to say
anybody.
that these are things, Matt, that just be a good human.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, it's the same way that if I got into a fight with my cousin, or if I got into an argument with my wife and I needed to go apologize, I would apologize in the same manner, right? Because it's sincere. At the end of the day, it's just being sincere about the apology. Be a good human.
Yeah, actually, exactly a month ago, we did a special segment on ESW, similar to what you had to do today, Matt, because we had somebody that couldn't make it on short notice. And we did what makes a good breach response. And we talked about this a lot. We talked, because that's basically an apology, right? Or it should be.
Should be.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Should be
we
part
did
of
something wrong.
Yeah.
Yes. Agreed. Gentlemen, always a pleasure. Thank you for joining us, Adrian. Always a pleasure, Jason and Tyler. Thank you, everyone, for watching and listening. We'll see you next week on Business Security Weekly.